"Seize the witch! She brings death to our door!" The shout pierced the morning mist that enveloped the humble cottages of Caerwyn village. Maerwynn's hands trembled as she crushed dried thyme between her fingers, the herb's fragrance momentarily masking the scent of fear that filled her small hut. Outside, boots pounded the muddy earth, growing louder with each heartbeat. The door burst open, oak splintering against stone, as 3 armored men entered. Their cloaks bore the emerald and silver emblem of House Thornold, lords of these lands for 7 generations. The youngest soldier, beardless and anxious, kept his hand on his sword hilt as he surveyed the hanging bundles of herbs, clay pots of salves, and the woman who stood before them. "You are the healer?" he demanded, his voice cracking slightly. Maerwynn straightened her spine, her 23 winters of life etched in the determination of her gray eyes. "I am," she answered, wiping her hands on her worn linen apron. "What business brings the Lord's men to my threshold?" The oldest of the 3 stepped forward, his beard flecked with silver, his armor bearing the dents and scratches of countless battles. "Lord Cedric of Thornold lies wounded, struck down by treachery. The castle physicians have failed him." His eyes narrowed. "You will come with us. I tend to the village folk. I have patients who—" The back of his gloved hand struck her cheek, sending her stumbling against the table where her mortar and pestle clattered to the floor. "This is not a request, woman. If Lord Cedric dies, your cottage burns with you inside it." Memories of old Brytha, who had raised her from infancy, flashed through Maerwynn's mind. The gentle hands that had taught her to identify herbs by touch and smell. The whispered incantations that seemed like nonsense, yet worked miracles on festering wounds. Brytha, who had died 3 winters past, leaving Maerwynn alone with secrets neither of them fully understood. "Allow me to gather my supplies," she said quietly, reaching for the leather satchel that hung beside her bed. The soldiers watched impatiently as she filled it with dried flowers, roots, and small bottles sealed with beeswax. Her fingers lingered on a copper medallion that hung from a nail on the wall, Brytha's final gift to her. Something whispered that she would need it, so she slipped it around her neck, tucking it beneath her simple dress. The journey to Dunbryc Castle took less than an hour on horseback, Maerwynn perched uncomfortably behind the youngest soldier. As they approached, the fortress loomed above the morning fog, its gray stone walls rising like the spine of some ancient beast. Never in her life had she passed through those gates, though she had glimpsed the castle from afar each day since childhood. Inside the courtyard, servants scurried about their duties, pausing only briefly to stare at the village healer, her clothes marking her as clearly as a brand. A stable boy whispered to a kitchen maid, who crossed herself hurriedly. "The hedge witch arrives," came a cultured voice from the castle steps. Lady Elspeth of Thornold, the lord's sister, descended toward them, her emerald gown sweeping the stones. Behind her trailed 2 handmaidens, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and disdain. "Is this truly what we've resorted to, Sir Garrick?" Lady Elspeth addressed the older soldier. "Bringing in village filth to tend to my brother?" "The royal physicians have done all they can, my lady," Sir Garrick replied, helping Maerwynn dismount with rough hands. "Lord Cedric's fever worsens by the hour." Lady Elspeth's eyes swept over Maerwynn as one might examine a questionable cut of meat at market. "And what potions and poultices does this creature bring to save my brother where learned men have failed?" Maerwynn met the noblewoman's gaze, refusing to lower her eyes despite the trembling in her knees. "I bring knowledge passed down through generations, my lady. Knowledge of the earth's gifts and their healing properties. Knowledge of witchcraft, more like," one of the handmaidens whispered, not quietly enough. "Take her to Lord Cedric," Lady Elspeth commanded with a dismissive wave. "But know this, healer. If my brother's condition worsens under your care, your life is forfeit." The soldiers led Maerwynn through corridors lined with tapestries depicting hunts and battles. Servants stopped their work to stare. Lords and ladies whispered behind jeweled hands as she passed. She felt naked under their scrutiny, a field mouse among hawks. "Is that the savage herb woman?" a young noble asked loudly. "What sort of castle allows such creatures to walk its halls?" "Desperate times," his companion replied with a laugh, "though I'd sooner trust a snake than a witch." They arrived at the Lord's chambers, where 2 guards stood at attention outside heavy oak doors carved with the Thornold family crest. Inside, the air hung heavy with the scent of illness and expensive incense meant to mask it. Velvet curtains had been drawn against the daylight, leaving the room in dim shadow broken only by candle flames. On a massive bed draped with fine linens lay Lord Cedric of Thornold. Though Maerwynn had never seen him up close, She had heard tales of his strength in battle and his justice in ruling. Now he looked small, his powerful frame diminished by fever. His skin held the waxy pallor of approaching death, and a crimson stain had seeped through the bandages at his side. Beside the bed stood Father Aldrich, the castle's chaplain, his fingers working prayer beads as he muttered Latin invocations. He paused mid-prayer to glare at Maerwynn. "We resort to pagan methods now?" he asked Sir Garrick. "Has God abandoned this house so thoroughly?" "Your prayers have not healed him, Father," Sir Garrick replied grimly. "Let us see what the woman can do." Maerwynn approached the bed, setting her satchel on a nearby table inlaid with mother-of-pearl. The faces around her, soldiers, priests, nobles, all watched with expressions ranging from hope to disgust. She ignored them, focusing instead on the wounded man before her. "I need clean water, fresh linens, and privacy," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "You'll have water and linens," Lady Elspeth replied from the doorway. "But privacy? So you can complete your dark rituals unobserved?" "I think not." Maerwynn turned to face the noblewoman. "My lady, healing is not a spectacle. Lord Cedric deserves dignity in his suffering." For a moment their eyes locked in silent battle. Then, surprisingly, Lady Elspeth nodded. "Everyone but Sir Garrick and myself will leave. Father, you may wait in the antechamber and continue your prayers there." As the room cleared, Maerwynn felt a strange sensation at the base of her skull, a buzzing, like bees in summer. She had felt it before, when treating particularly difficult cases, but never this strongly. Something about this place, this man, awakened something within her that she did not understand. She removed Lord Cedric's bandages to reveal a festering wound that smelled of death. An ordinary person would have succumbed days ago. Whatever kept him clinging to life was extraordinary. Without thinking, words in a language she did not recognize began forming on her lips. Her fingers traced symbols in the air above the wound. The candles flickered, as if caught in a sudden draft. "What are you doing?" Lady Elspeth demanded, fear edging her voice. Maerwynn blinked, returning to herself. "Preparing to heal your brother, my lady," she answered, though she was not entirely certain what had just happened. "And praying that I am not too late." Maerwynn worked through the night, her fingers stained with herb-infused oils and Lord Cedric's blood. She had cleaned the wound thoroughly, applied a poultice of yarrow, garlic, and honey, then bound it with fresh linen. Yet conventional remedies alone would not save him. The poison that tainted his blood ran too deep. Lady Elspeth had eventually succumbed to exhaustion, retiring to a cushioned chair in the corner where she now slept fitfully. Sir Garrick maintained his vigil by the door, his weathered face betraying nothing but occasional concern when he glanced at his lord's pallid form. In the quietest hour before dawn, when even the castle mice had ceased their scurrying, Maerwynn felt that strange buzzing sensation return, stronger now, vibrating from the copper medallion against her chest. Without fully understanding why, she removed it from beneath her dress. The simple disc, etched with symbols she had never learned to read, felt unnaturally warm in her palm. "What manner of amulet is that?" Sir Garrick's voice startled her. "It belonged to Breatha, the woman who raised me," Maerwynn answered softly. "She gave it to me before she died. It bears old markings," he observed, stepping closer. "From before the Christian kings." Maerwynn's brow furrowed. "You recognize these symbols?" The knight's face hardened. "I've seen their like in ancient places best left undisturbed." He gestured to Lord Cedric. "Will he live to see the sunrise?" "Not without intervention beyond my usual skills," she admitted, surprising herself with her honesty. "The blade that struck him was poisoned with something I cannot identify. It resists my herbs." Sir Garrick's hand moved to his sword hilt. "If you speak of witchcraft—" "I speak of a choice," Maerwynn interrupted. "To let your lord die honorably, or to try something that your priests would condemn, but that might save him." The knight studied her face in the candlelight. "You're not what I expected, healer. The villagers speak of you with respect, not fear. And yet you threaten to burn my home." "I serve Lord Cedric," he replied simply. "I would threaten the gates of hell itself if it might save him." A groan from the bed drew their attention. Lord Cedric's eyes had opened, feverish and unfocused. "Water," he rasped. Maerwynn lifted his head gently, bringing a cup to his cracked lips. He drank weakly, most of the liquid spilling down his chin. My lord. Sir Garrick knelt beside the bed. How fare you? Like a man with one foot in the grave. Cedric managed a weak smile before his gaze settled on Maerwynn. Who is this? A healer from the village, my lord. We brought her to tend your wound. Cedric's eyes, despite the fever, held a sharp intelligence as they assessed her. You have a name, healer? Maerwynn, my lord. Maerwynn, he repeated, the syllables rolling off his tongue as if testing their weight. Your face, familiar somehow. Before she could respond, his body convulsed violently. Blood seeped through the fresh bandages as the wound reopened. Garrick, he gasped between spasms. If I die, protect my sister from Osric's ambitions. He will... Another convulsion cut off his words. Lady Elspeth awoke with a cry. Cedric! She rushed to the bedside, her earlier composure shattered by the sight of her brother's suffering. Maerwynn pressed her hands against the wound, trying to still the bleeding. The buzzing in her mind became a roar. The medallion around her neck grew hot enough to scald her skin, yet she felt no pain. Everyone back, she commanded with an authority that surprised even herself. What are you doing? Lady Elspeth demanded. Saving your brother, if you'll allow it. The noblewoman's face contorted with conflict, pride warring with desperation. Do what you must, she finally whispered. Maerwynn closed her eyes, placing the medallion directly over Lord Cedric's wound. Words she had never learned spilled from her lips, ancient, powerful words that seemed to draw the very shadows closer. Filthy witch. The chamber door burst open as Father Aldrich stormed in, his face twisted with righteous fury. I knew we would find devil's work here. Behind him stood Lord Osric of Ravenscroft, Cedric's cousin and heir should he die without issue. His thin lips curved in what might have been concern, but failed to reach his calculating eyes. Step away from him, hedge witch, Osric commanded. We'll not have black magic in this castle. She is healing him. Sir Garrick interposed himself between Maerwynn and the newcomers. She is damning his immortal soul. Father Aldrich raised a silver crucifix. I heard the pagan tongue from the antechamber. She speaks with demons. Lord Osric placed a restraining hand on the priest's shoulder. Perhaps we should hear what the healer has to say in her defense. His smile was as cold as winter frost. Before we determine the appropriate punishment, Maerwynn did not move from Cedric's side. There is no defense needed for saving a man's life. Presumptuous wretch. Osric stepped forward. You dare speak as an equal in the presence of your betters? My brother is dying while you posture. Lady Elspeth cut in sharply. If this woman can save him where your learned physicians have failed, Lord Osric, then I care not what tongue she speaks or what methods she employs. Blasphemy, Father Aldrich gasped. Practicality, she countered. Would you rather preside over my brother's funeral mass, Father? The tension in the room was palpable, a drawn bowstring ready to snap. It was into this charged atmosphere that an unexpected voice spoke. Let her continue. All eyes turned to the bed, where Lord Cedric had somehow raised himself to his elbows. His face was ashen, his body trembling with effort, but his voice carried the unmistakable authority of command. My lord, Father Aldrich began, this woman practices forbidden arts, and I am still lord here, Cedric interrupted, each word seemingly costing him great effort. I will determine what is forbidden in my own chambers. Osric's smile vanished. Cousin, you are not thinking clearly. The fever is not yet in my brain, Osric. Cedric's eyes hardened. Though your concern is touching. Maerwynn felt the atmosphere shift. The men who had entered ready to drag her to a pyre now found themselves without clear recourse. Even in his weakened state, Lord Cedric commanded respect. Everyone out, he ordered, except the healer and Garrick. I will stay with you, brother, Lady Elspeth insisted. Cedric nodded weakly. As you wish, sister. Father Aldrich clutched his crucifix tighter. My lord, I implore you. Out. The word cost Cedric his remaining strength. He collapsed back onto the pillows, his breathing labored. With venomous glares at Maerwynn, Father Aldrich and Lord Osric retreated, though not before Osric whispered, This is not finished, witch. When the door closed behind them, Maerwynn returned her attention to her patient. The interruption had cost precious time. Lord Cedric's skin had taken on a bluish tinge around his lips. Whatever you were doing, Lady Elspeth said, her earlier hostility replaced by naked fear. Please continue. Save him. Maerwynn nodded, placing the medallion once more over the wound. This time, she surrendered completely to the buzzing in her mind. allowing it to guide her hands and voice. The ancient language flowed more easily now, as if remembering itself through her. The air in the chamber grew unnaturally cold. Frost formed on the goblets, on the window glass, on the metal fixtures of the room. The candle flames turned blue, then white, their light intensifying until the chamber was as bright as midday. Beneath her hands, Lord Cedric's wound began to close, not gradually as with natural healing, but rapidly, visibly, the flesh knitting together before their astonished eyes. Color returned to his face, his breathing steadied. When it was done, Maerwynn swayed on her feet, suddenly drained beyond measure. Sir Garrick caught her before she could fall. "What manner of healer are you?" he whispered, his voice a mixture of awe and fear. "I don't know," she answered honestly, staring at her hands as if they belonged to a stranger. On the bed, Lord Cedric opened his eyes. They were clear now, free of fever's haze, and fixed directly on Maerwynn with an intensity that made her shiver more than the unnatural cold. "I know you," he said softly. "I've seen your face before." Before she could ask what he meant, exhaustion claimed her, and the world faded to black. Maerwynn awoke in unfamiliar surroundings. Gone was the familiar scent of dried herbs and wood smoke that permeated her cottage. Instead, she found herself lying on a feather mattress beneath embroidered linens, surrounded by stone walls hung with tapestries depicting hunting scenes. Sunlight streamed through a narrow window, suggesting it was well past dawn. She sat up quickly, memories flooding back. Lord Cedric's wound, the strange power that had flowed through her, the accusing eyes of Father Aldrich and Lord Osric. Her hand flew to her neck, finding the copper medallion still there, cool against her skin as if it had never burned with otherworldly heat. The chamber door opened, and a young serving girl entered carrying a tray. She startled upon seeing Maerwynn awake, nearly dropping her burden. "Oh, I'll fetch Lady Elspeth at once," she stammered, setting down the tray and backing toward the door. "Wait," Maerwynn called. "How long have I slept? And Lord Cedric, does he live?" The girl hesitated, clearly torn between orders to report Maerwynn's waking and answering her questions. "Since yestereve, milady. And yes, his lordship is much recovered. They're saying it's a miracle." Before Maerwynn could correct the girl's deferential address or ask more questions, she had disappeared through the door, leaving Maerwynn alone with a breakfast of fresh bread, honey, and watered wine, fare beyond what she normally ate in her cottage. She rose, finding herself dressed in a simple shift not her own. Her familiar clothes were nowhere to be seen. A basin of clean water stood on a table beneath a polished metal mirror. As she splashed water on her face, she caught her reflection and paused. The face that stared back seemed somehow altered, though she could not identify precisely how. Her gray eyes appeared lighter, almost silver in the morning light. Had her cheekbones always been so defined? Was her skin always this luminous? Perhaps it was merely the quality of the mirror, far superior to the cloudy glass she used at home. The door opened again, this time admitting Lady Elspeth. The noblewoman's demeanor had changed dramatically from the previous day. Where there had been disdain, now there was wary respect. "You're awake," she stated, dismissing the two handmaidens who had followed her with a wave. When they were alone, she continued, "My brother asks for you." Maerwynn gestured to her state of undress. "My clothes are being cleaned. You will find suitable attire in that chest." Elspeth indicated a wooden coffer at the foot of the bed. "I shall wait outside while you make yourself presentable." Left alone once more, Maerwynn opened the chest to find a gown of fine blue wool, far finer than anything she had ever worn, with embroidery at the neckline and sleeves. Beneath it lay appropriate undergarments, stockings, and soft leather shoes. She dressed quickly, marveling at the way the fabric fell in graceful folds around her body, so unlike her usual homespun. Lady Elspeth nodded approvingly when Maerwynn emerged. "Follow me," she commanded, leading the way through corridors bustling with morning activity. Servants bowed as they passed, but Maerwynn noticed that many made furtive signs against evil when they thought she wasn't looking. "You've caused quite a stir," Lady Elspeth remarked, noticing her observation. "Half the castle believes you're a saint sent by God, the other half thinks you're a witch who should burn. And what do you believe, my lady?" Elspeth paused, turning to face her directly. "I believe you saved my brother when all others failed. That earns you my gratitude, if not my trust." She resumed walking. "Father Aldrich has been most vocal about thee. unusual nature of your healing method. I meant no sacrilege, Maerwynn said carefully. Intention matters little in matters of faith, Elspeth replied. Be thankful that Cedric's word still carries more weight than the priest's. For now, they arrived at Lord Cedric's chambers, where Sir Garrick stood guard. He acknowledged them with a respectful nod, his expression betraying nothing of his thoughts regarding Maerwynn's presence. Inside, the chamber had been transformed. Gone were the sick room gloom and stale air of impending death. Windows stood open to admit fresh breeze and sunlight. Lord Cedric himself sat in a chair near the hearth, dressed and alert, though still pale from his ordeal. He rose as they entered, moving with the careful deliberation of a man newly returned from death's threshold. The healer awakens, he said, his voice stronger than the day before. Leave us, Elspeth. I would speak with her alone. Lady Elspeth frowned. Cedric, please, sister. With obvious reluctance, she complied, closing the door behind her. Lord Cedric gestured to a second chair. Sit, Maerwynn of Caerwyn. We have much to discuss. She obeyed, perching uncomfortably on the edge of the cushioned seat, acutely aware of the disparity in their stations despite the fine clothes she now wore. How do you feel, my lord? She asked, professional concern overtaking her nervousness. Alive, thanks to you. He touched his side where the wound had been, now nothing but a thin red line. Father Aldrich insists your methods were ungodly. Sir Garrick speaks of ancient words and impossible healing. Lady Elspeth describes candlelight that turned white as winter snow, his penetrating gaze fixed on her face. Yet none can explain how a village healer commands such power. Maerwynn's fingers found the medallion at her throat. I cannot explain it either, my lord. I only know that when I placed this against your wound, I felt something. Words came to me that I've never learned. May I see it? She hesitated, then removed the medallion and placed it in his outstretched hand. Lord Cedric examined it carefully, running his thumb over the etched symbols. Do you know what these markings mean? He asked. No, my lord. It was given to me by Breitha, the woman who raised me. And your parents? Dead before I could remember them, my lord. Or so Breitha told me. Cedric returned the medallion to her. These symbols belong to the old faith, what the Christians call pagan. They were used by the Caerwynian people who inhabited these lands before my ancestors arrived. He leaned forward. They tell a story of a lineage protected by ancient powers. A bloodline of healers and seers who could command elements and speak to spirits. Maerwynn's heart quickened. How do you know this? Because I've seen this medallion before, he replied quietly. In dreams that have haunted me since childhood. Dreams of a woman with silver eyes who stands between our world and another. His gaze intensified. A woman with your face. Before Maerwynn could respond, the chamber door burst open. Lord Osric strode in, flanked by Father Aldrich and 4 armed guards. Their expressions left no doubt as to their intentions. Cousin, Osric announced with false concern. I've come to free you from the witch's influence. Cedric rose to his feet, anger flashing across his features. You forget yourself, Osric. This is my chamber and you enter uninvited. Forgive the intrusion, Osric replied without a trace of remorse. But when a lord consorts alone with a known practitioner of dark arts, certain precautions must be taken. Father Aldrich stepped forward, clutching his crucifix. My lord, this woman has bewitched you. The manner of your healing was unnatural. The manner of my healing is my concern, not yours, Cedric interrupted coldly. It is the concern of all God-fearing Christians, the priest insisted. This woman speaks in tongues not heard since the devil worshippers were driven from these lands. She bears pagan symbols. He pointed accusingly at the medallion in Maerwynn's hand. The castle folk speak of frost forming in summer and lights that burn white in darkness. Witnesses to a miracle, then, Cedric countered. Witnesses to witchcraft, Osric corrected. For your own protection, cousin, we must remove this woman from your presence and determine the extent of her influence. Maerwynn rose slowly, sensing the peril of her situation. The guards' hands rested on their sword hilts, ready to seize her at Osric's command. You would arrest a woman who saved my life? Cedric's voice had dropped dangerously low. We would question her thoroughly, Osric replied smoothly. To ensure your recovery is genuine and not some temporary enchantment meant to lower our guard. The medallion in Maerwynn's palm began to warm again, the buzzing sensation returning to the base of her skull. She felt power gathering around her, responding to her fear. Lord Cedric speaks truly, she said, finding courage in the strange energy flowing through her veins. I am a healer, nothing more. A healer does not command frost and fire, Father Aldrich spat. A healer does not speak in demonic tongues. She leaves with me or not at all, Cedric declared firmly. Osric's facade of concern slipped momentarily, revealing naked ambition beneath. Your judgment is compromised, cousin. The Council of Lords has empowered me to act in your stead until your recovery is confirmed. Understanding dawned on Maerwynn. Osric had used her unusual healing methods as a pretext to question Cedric's fitness to rule. With Cedric declared incompetent or bewitched, Osric would assume control of Thornold lands. The door opened again, and Sir Garrick entered, sword drawn. My lord, he addressed Cedric, Lady Elspeth sent me to ensure your safety. The room balanced on a knife's edge of violence. 4 guards loyal to Osric, Sir Garrick loyal to Cedric, and Maerwynn herself, uncertain of her own capabilities, but feeling power building within her like a gathering storm. This woman leaves with us now, Osric stated flatly. Stand aside, Sir Garrick, or be charged with treason against the Council's authority. I recognize no authority here save Lord Cedric's, the knight replied, his blade unwavering. Then you die a traitor, Osric nodded to his men. As the first guard stepped forward, Maerwynn felt the medallion grow white-hot. Without conscious thought, she raised it before her. Light erupted from the ancient copper disc, blindingly bright, filling the chamber with its radiance. The guards cried out, shielding their eyes. Witch! Father Aldrich screamed, stumbling backward. When the light faded, Maerwynn stood transformed. Her simple gown seemed to shimmer with an inner luminescence. Her hair floated around her head, as if suspended in water. Her eyes glowed silver, pupilless, and ancient. You will not touch him, she said. But the voice was not entirely her own. It echoed with harmonics that made the stone walls vibrate in sympathy. Lord Cedric of Thornold stands under the protection of Caerwyn. Osric's men backed away, terror evident on their faces. Even Osric himself had paled considerably, though he struggled to maintain his composure. What are you? He whispered. The question hung in the air as Maerwynn stood bathed in otherworldly light. In truth, she had no answer to give. The power flowing through her felt both foreign and intimately familiar, as if she had always possessed it, but had forgotten until this moment. She is the last daughter of Caerwyn, Lord Cedric said, stepping to her side. Heir to powers your Christian faith has tried to erase from memory. Father Aldrich clutched his crucifix tighter, his knuckles white. Blasphemy! The old gods were demons, their worshippers servants of darkness. Is healing darkness, priest? Cedric challenged. Is protection of the innocent evil? Osric had recovered some of his composure, though he kept a wary distance from Maerwynn. Whatever she is, cousin, she is dangerous. Surely you see that now. I see a woman who saved my life when your physicians failed, Cedric replied coldly. I see loyal Sir Garrick defending his lord against usurpers, and I see you, Osric, overplaying your hand. The chamber door burst open once more as Lady Elspeth entered, followed by a dozen armed guards bearing the Thornold crest. Unlike Osric's men, these soldiers' loyalty was unquestionable. Brother, she said, assessing the scene with sharp eyes. I see I was right to bring reinforcements. Osric's expression twisted with fury and fear. The council will hear of this. They will not stand for... The council, Cedric interrupted, appointed you temporarily in my absence. I am no longer absent. He turned to Elspeth's guards. Escort Lord Osric and Father Aldrich to their quarters. They are not to leave until I summon them. You cannot imprison a man of God, Father Aldrich protested. I offer you hospitality, not imprisonment, Cedric corrected with dangerous courtesy. Though that could change. Should you prefer the dungeons? As Osric and the priest were led away, Maerwynn felt the strange energy begin to recede. The room's unearthly glow faded, and her hair settled around her shoulders once more. Exhaustion hit her like a physical blow, her knees buckling beneath her. Lord Cedric caught her before she fell, his strong arms supporting her weight with surprising gentleness. Easy, he murmured, helping her to a chair. The power takes its toll, I imagine. Lady Elspeth approached cautiously, studying Maerwynn with newfound respect and apprehension. What happened here? The servants speak of blinding light seen through the cracks in the door. Our healer revealed herself, Cedric answered, his hand lingering on Maerwynn's shoulder, though I suspect she understands as little of what occurred as we do. Maerwynn clutched the medallion, now cool once more in her palm. My lord is right. she said, her voice hoarse. I know not what came over me. It was as if someone else spoke through me. Someone, or something, Sir Garrick muttered, sheathing his sword. Not something, Cedric corrected. The blood of Caerwyn runs in her veins. I've suspected since she healed me. No, before that, since the moment they brought her into my chamber. He turned to Elspeth. Do you remember the tales Mother told us? Of the ancient line of healers who could command the elements? Elspeth's eyes widened. Surely you don't believe those were anything more than bedtime stories. I believe what I witnessed with my own eyes, Cedric replied. As do you, sister, though you're reluctant to admit it. Maerwynn looked between them, confusion evident on her face. My lord, I am but a village healer. Brytha taught me herb lore and midwifery, nothing more. Brytha, Cedric repeated thoughtfully. Did she ever speak of your parents, your true origins? Only that they died when I was an infant, Maerwynn answered. She raised me as her own. Cedric exchanged a meaningful glance with his sister. Elspeth, fetch the chronicle from Mother's chambers, the one bound in red leather. Lady Elspeth hesitated only briefly before nodding and departing. Sir Garrick positioned himself at the chamber door, ensuring no further unwelcome interruptions. My lord, Maerwynn began uncertainly. What is happening to me? Cedric sat across from her, his expression solemn. 23 years ago, the last known descendants of the Caerwynian bloodline were hunted down by zealots who feared their ancient powers. A man, his wife, and their infant daughter. He paused, studying her face. The parents were killed, but the child was never found. Maerwynn's heart quickened. You cannot think... I think Brytha was more than a village healer, he interrupted gently. I think she saved you and hid you in plain sight, raising you as her apprentice while concealing your true heritage. This is madness, Maerwynn whispered, though something deep within her resonated with his words. I am no one special. What you did today, what you did to heal me, says otherwise. His intense gaze held hers. The dreams I've had since childhood, always the same woman with silver eyes, standing between worlds, protecting these lands from threats beyond understanding. Lady Elspeth returned carrying an ancient tome bound in faded red leather. She placed it on the table between them and stepped back, her expression troubled. Open it, Cedric urged Maerwynn. With trembling hands, she did as he asked. The vellum pages were covered in script she could not read, interspersed with illustrations rendered in faded ink and gold leaf. She turned the pages carefully until she came to an image that made her breath catch. A woman stood with arms outstretched, light emanating from her palms. Around her neck hung a medallion identical to Maerwynn's. The resemblance to her own face was unmistakable. That is Mira of Caerwyn, Cedric said quietly, the last known sorceress of the bloodline. Until now. This proves nothing, Maerwynn insisted, though her voice lacked conviction. It is merely a coincidence of features. Is this also coincidence? He turned several pages forward to reveal another illustration. A copper medallion with the exact symbols etched into her own. The seal of Caerwyn, Elspeth read from the text beside the image. Passed from mother to daughter, through generations unnumbered, bearing the power to channel energies from the other world. Maerwynn touched the illustration with reverent fingers. If what you say is true, if I am this lost child, why would Brytha never tell me? To protect you, Cedric answered simply. The same zealots who killed your parents would have hunted you had they known you lived. And now? Maerwynn asked, fear edging her voice. What happens now that I have revealed myself? Before Cedric could answer, a commotion erupted in the corridor outside. Sir Garrick drew his sword once more as the door flew open to admit a breathless messenger. My lord, the man gasped. Riders approached from the south, bearing the king's standard. Cedric rose swiftly. How many? A full company, my lord. At their head rides Duke Aelfric. Lady Elspeth paled. The witch hunter. The significance of the title was not lost on Maerwynn. Duke Aelfric was notorious throughout the realm for his zealous persecution of those he deemed heretics, particularly practitioners of the old ways. This is Osric's doing, Cedric growled. He must have sent word before attempting to seize you. What will you do, my lord? Sir Garrick asked. Cedric's jaw tightened. Prepare to receive the Duke with all honors due his station. Elspeth, see that chambers are prepared for him and his senior officers. You would welcome him? Elspeth asked incredulously. I would not give him cause to question my loyalty to the crown, Cedric replied. Not yet. He turned to Maerwynn, his expression grave. You cannot be found here. Duke Aelfric's reputation for cruelty to suspected witches is well earned. Where would you have me go? Maerwynn asked. If he is as thorough as they say, he will search the village as well as the castle. There is a place, Sir Garrick interjected unexpectedly. The old shrine in the North Woods. Few remember it exists and fewer still dare approach it. Cedric nodded slowly. Yes, the sacred grove. The Christians avoid it out of superstition, believing it haunted by pagan spirits. You would send her alone? Elspeth asked, concern evident in her voice despite her lingering wariness of Maerwynn. No, Cedric decided. Sir Garrick will accompany her. He turned to the knight. Take provisions for a fortnight. With luck, the Duke's business here will be concluded by then. Sir Garrick bowed. As you command, my lord. And the medallion, Cedric continued, addressing Maerwynn. Keep it hidden. Its significance would not be lost on a man like Aelfric. Maerwynn slipped the copper disc beneath her gown once more. My lord, I still don't understand what I am or what is expected of me. Cedric took her hands in his, an unprecedented gesture between lord and commoner that caused Lady Elspeth's eyebrows to rise. You are Maerwynn of Caerwyn, he said softly, the last of an ancient line tasked with maintaining balance between worlds. The power you displayed today is but a fraction of what you might command with proper training. Training I do not have, she pointed out. Perhaps not, he conceded, but the knowledge is in your blood. It awakened when you healed me, and it will continue to grow. His grip tightened slightly. You must learn to control it before Aelfric discovers you. Another messenger appeared at the door. My lord, the Duke's company has reached the outer bailey. Cedric released Maerwynn's hands reluctantly. Go with Sir Garrick. The North Woods will shield you from Aelfric's men while you learn to harness your abilities. And if I cannot, then pray that I can divert the Duke's attention elsewhere, he answered grimly. For if he finds you, death would be the kindest fate you could expect. Elspeth approached with a bundle of clothing. Change into these, she instructed, handing them to Maerwynn. They are plain enough not to draw attention, yet warm enough for the forest nights. As Maerwynn accepted the clothes, their fingers touched briefly. To her surprise, Lady Elspeth did not recoil from the contact as she might have expected. Thank you, Maerwynn said softly. Elspeth met her gaze directly. You saved my brother when all seemed lost. Whatever else you may be, I owe you a debt for that. Sir Garrick returned wearing simpler garb than his knightly attire, a sword belted at his waist and a traveling pack slung over his shoulder. We must go now, my lady. There is a servant's passage that will take us to the stables unseen. Maerwynn changed quickly behind a screen, while the others finalized their plans. The clothes Elspeth had provided were well made but unadorned, a hunter's garb that would not seem out of place in the forest. As she emerged, Lord Cedric approached her one last time. When this is over, he said quietly, for her ears alone, return to me. There is much we must discuss about your heritage and your future. Something in his tone caused her heart to flutter strangely. If I survive this, my lord, I shall return. You will survive, he replied with conviction. The blood of Caerwyn is not so easily extinguished. Sir Garrick led her to a concealed door behind a tapestry depicting a hunting scene. As they slipped into the narrow passage beyond, Maerwynn cast one final glance at Lord Cedric. He stood tall and commanding, already composing himself to receive the witch hunter who sought to destroy her. The passage closed behind them, plunging them into darkness relieved only by Sir Garrick's small lantern. As they hurried through the hidden corridors of Dunbryc Castle, Maerwynn felt her life transforming with each step. The simple healer from Caerwyn village was fading away, replaced by something older and more powerful, a legacy she had never imagined, yet somehow had always known awaited her. Above them, the thunder of hooves announced Duke Aelfric's arrival in the castle courtyard. The hunt had begun. 7 days passed in the sacred grove, each one a revelation for Maerwynn. The ancient circle of standing stones, half reclaimed by forest, thrummed with the same energy she had felt in the medallion. Here, surrounded by primeval oaks and whispers of the old ways, her dormant powers flourished. Sir Garrick maintained a respectful distance, watching from the edge of the clearing as she practiced. Each morning she would sit cross-legged at the center of the stone circle, the medallion clasped between her palms, and surrender to the ancient knowledge that bubbled up from somewhere deep within her soul. By the third day, she could summon small flames to her fingertips. By the fifth, She could heal the wing of an injured hawk that Garrick had found in the underbrush. Now, on the seventh dawn, she stood with arms outstretched, her hair rippling in a breeze that affected nothing else in the grove, communing with energies invisible to ordinary eyes. "You learn quickly," Sir Garrick observed, approaching with a brace of rabbits he had snared for their breakfast. Too quickly for comfort, some might say. Maerwynn lowered her arms, the ethereal glow around her fading. "Does it frighten you, Sir Knight?" "Many things frighten me," he admitted with surprising candor. "But a woman coming into her birthright is not among them." He began preparing the rabbits for cooking. "My grandmother followed the old ways in secret. She would leave offerings at forgotten shrines like this one when the priests weren't watching. You never mentioned this before." "It wasn't relevant before." He glanced up at her. "Now it is." Their simple camp was well hidden among the ancient stones, invisible from more than a few paces away. They had chosen the site carefully, ensuring multiple escape routes should Duke Ælfric's men venture this far into the forest. "What news from the village?" Maerwynn asked, helping him build a small fire. "None direct," he replied, "but I spotted royal guards patrolling the forest edge yesterday. They're expanding their search." Fear knotted in Maerwynn's stomach. "Then it's only a matter of time before they find us." "Perhaps." Garrick skewered the rabbit meat on green branches. "Or perhaps Lord Cedric has already convinced the Duke to look elsewhere." "You have great faith in your lord." "As should you," he replied meaningfully. "I've served Cedric since he was a boy. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you." Heat rose to Maerwynn's cheeks. "He is a lord. I am the last sorceress of Caerwyn," Garrick interrupted. "A heritage as ancient and noble as any royal bloodline." Before she could respond, a rustling in the undergrowth caught their attention. Garrick's hand flew to his sword hilt as a figure emerged from between the trees. A young boy from the village, breathless from running. Willem. Maerwynn recognized the miller's son, a child of perhaps 10 winters. "What are you doing here?" "Looking for you," the boy panted. "Lady Elspeth sent me. Said only a child could slip past the guards unnoticed." Garrick knelt before the boy. "What message does Lady Elspeth send?" "The Duke plans to burn your cottage at sunset," Willem said, addressing Maerwynn. He says it will draw out the witch if she still lives." Maerwynn's blood ran cold. "But the village, if the fire spreads..." "That's not all," Willem continued. "They've taken Lord Cedric prisoner. The Duke says he's under a witch's spell and must be purified." Garrick rose swiftly, his expression dark. "Purified." Ælfric's euphemism for torture. "Why would they arrest Lord Cedric?" Maerwynn asked, though she feared she already knew the answer. "Lord Osric accused him of harboring a witch," Willem explained. "Said he was bewitched by you. The Duke believes him." "Of course he does," Garrick growled. "With Cedric imprisoned, Osric stands to gain control of Thornold lands." Maerwynn clutched the medallion, feeling its power pulse in sympathy with her rising emotions. "We must return to the castle. Now." "That would be suicide," Garrick objected. "The Duke has dozens of men-at-arms. We are but 2. 3, Willem piped up earnestly. "I can help." Despite everything, Maerwynn smiled at the boy's courage. "You've helped enough, brave Willem. Return to the village and warn them about the fire. Tell them to prepare buckets and wet blankets." As Willem disappeared back into the forest, Garrick turned to Maerwynn. "You cannot seriously intend to confront Duke Ælfric. He's killed scores of suspected witches across the realm. And now he holds Lord Cedric prisoner because of me," she replied, gathering her few possessions. "I will not hide in the forest while he suffers for protecting me. Then you go to your death." Maerwynn straightened, silver light flickering in her eyes. "Perhaps, or perhaps I go to claim my destiny." She held up the medallion. "For 7 days, I have felt the power of Caerwyn growing within me. It is time to use it." Garrick studied her face, seeing determination that would not be swayed. Finally, he nodded. "Then I stand with you, Maerwynn of Caerwyn, to whatever end." They traveled swiftly through the forest, avoiding the main paths where Duke Ælfric's men might patrol. As the afternoon waned, they reached the edge of the woods overlooking Caerwyn village. From their vantage point, they could see unusual activity around Maerwynn's cottage. Soldiers stacking bundles of straw and kindling against its walls. "They mean to make a spectacle of it," Garrick observed grimly. Beyond the village, Dunbryc Castle stood silhouetted against the setting sun. Its familiar towers, once a distant landmark in Maerwynn's daily life, now represented both peril and purpose. "How will we enter?" she asked. "The gates will be heavily guarded. Not all entrances to Dunbryc are so obvious," Garrick replied. "There is a hidden way through the old well in the lower town. It connects to the same passages we used to escape." They circled wide around the village, keeping to the shadows as dusk gathered. The lower town bustled with unusual activity, royal guards patrolling the streets, villagers hurrying to complete their business before nightfall, and the ominous presence of a group of black-robed men Maerwynn recognized as inquisitors, Duke Elfric's personal witch hunters. The abandoned well stood in a weed-choked courtyard behind a disused tannery. Garrick removed the rotting wooden cover and peered into the darkness below. "There are handholds cut into the stone," he explained. "Follow me closely." The descent was treacherous, the ancient iron rungs slick with moss and damp. At the bottom, instead of water, they found a narrow tunnel barely high enough to stand in. Garrick lit a small lantern, revealing walls of fitted stone glistening with moisture. "These passages predate the castle," he explained as they moved forward. "Some say they were built by the Caerwynians themselves, as pathways between their sacred sites." The tunnel branched several times, but Garrick navigated with confidence, leading them steadily upward. After what seemed an eternity of damp darkness, they reached a vertical shaft with a ladder leading up to a trapdoor. "The castle kitchens," Garrick whispered. "At this hour, they should be mostly empty as the evening meal has already been served." He climbed the ladder and cautiously pushed against the trapdoor. It resisted briefly, then gave way with a soft groan. They emerged behind a stack of flour barrels in a quiet corner of the vast castle kitchens. Only a few servants remained, cleaning up after the evening's preparations. Garrick led Maerwynn through the servants' corridors, avoiding the main halls where they might be spotted. They encountered few people, and those they did pass paid little attention to them. Just another knight and servant going about castle business. "Where would they hold Lord Cedric?" Maerwynn whispered as they paused at a junction of corridors. "Not the dungeons. Elfric would want him close at hand for questioning. The North Tower, I suspect. It has chambers suitable for holding noble prisoners." As they approached the tower staircase, voices echoed from above. Garrick pulled Maerwynn into an alcove as two of Duke Elfric's guards descended, their conversation clearly audible. "Never seen the Duke so determined," one was saying. 3 hours of questioning, and Lord Cedric hasn't broken. "He'll break," the other replied confidently. "They all do, eventually. The Duke has ways of making even the strongest man confess. And when he does, then we burn the Witch Lord alongside his cottage witch if we ever find her." The guards passed without noticing them hidden in the shadows. When their footsteps faded, Maerwynn emerged, her face set with grim resolve. 3 hours of questioning," she repeated softly. "What have they done to him?" "Nothing that will matter once we free him," Garrick assured her, though his expression belied his confident words. They ascended the tower stairs cautiously. At the top landing, 2 more guards stood outside a heavy wooden door reinforced with iron bands. Garrick motioned for Maerwynn to stay back as he approached them openly. "Sir Garrick?" one guard greeted him with surprise. "We thought you had left the castle." "I returned with news for Duke Elfric," he replied smoothly. "Is he within?" "No, my lord. He and Lord Osric have gone to the village to oversee the burning of the witch's cottage." Maerwynn's heart clenched. They had less time than she'd thought. "Then I shall deliver my report to Lord Cedric directly," Garrick said, reaching for the door. The guard stepped in front of him. "I'm sorry, Sir Garrick, but Duke Elfric left strict orders. No one is to enter without his personal authorization." "I see." Garrick's hand moved casually to his sword hilt. "And if I told you that I have that authorization?" The guards exchanged uneasy glances, hands moving to their own weapons. "We would have to ask you to wait while we confirm that with the Duke, sir." "I'm afraid there isn't time for that," Garrick replied, drawing his sword in one fluid motion. What followed was a brief but violent struggle. Garrick was a skilled swordsman, but he faced 2 trained guards in a confined space. One fell quickly to his blade, but the other managed to land a glancing blow on Garrick's arm before Maerwynn intervened. Without conscious thought, she raised her hand toward the remaining guard. The medallion blazed beneath her clothing, and a pulse of silver energy threw the man against the wall with bone-crushing force. He slumped to the floor, unmoving. Garrick stared at her, clutching his wounded arm. "You grow stronger by the hour." "Or more desperate," she replied, helping him bind the injury with a strip torn from her sleeve. "Can you still fight?" "Well enough," he assured her, retrieving his sword. "Let us free Lord Cedric before more guards arrive." The door was locked, but the key hung at the belt of one fallen guard. Inside, they found a Spartan chamber lit by a single torch. Lord Cedric was bound to a chair, his fine clothing torn and stained with blood. His face was bruised, one eye swollen shut, but his unbowed posture spoke of unbroken spirit. "Maerwynn," he rasped when he saw her, disbelief and hope warring in his expression. "You should not have come." "I could not stay away," she replied, rushing to untie his bonds. "Not while you suffered for sheltering me." Garrick secured the door behind them. "We must hurry, my lord. The Duke has gone to the village to burn Maerwynn's cottage. It may be our best chance to escape the castle." Cedric rose unsteadily, accepting Garrick's support. "Escape is no longer possible," he said grimly. "Aelfric has sent to the capital for reinforcements. By tomorrow the castle will be surrounded." "Then we must confront him now," Maerwynn declared, "before his power grows further." "Confront the king's own witch hunter?" Cedric shook his head. "Even with your awakening powers, the odds are insurmountable." "Not if the people stand with us," she countered. "The villagers know me. They've trusted me with their ailments, their births, their deaths. Will they truly believe I am a witch deserving of the pyre?" Cedric studied her face, seeing the transformation that had occurred in the week since he'd last seen her. Gone was the uncertain village healer. In her place stood a woman, aware of her power and purpose. "What do you propose?" he asked. "We go to the village," she answered. "We stop them from burning my cottage and threatening innocent lives. And we show them what true power looks like when wielded with compassion rather than fear." Garrick checked the corridor. "Clear for now, but it won't remain so. We should move." They descended the tower by a different staircase, one that led to the castle's western postern gate. The guard there was loyal to Cedric and let them pass without question, though his eyes widened at his lord's battered appearance. Twilight had given way to full darkness by the time they reached the edge of the village. A crowd had gathered around Maerwynn's cottage, where torches illuminated a grim tableau. Duke Aelfric, a tall figure in ornate armor, addressed the assembled villagers, while Lord Osric stood smugly at his side. Soldiers held the crowd back from the cottage, which had been surrounded by kindling and straw. "Harbor a witch in your midst," Aelfric's resonant voice carried to where they hid. "This woman, Maerwynn, has bewitched your lord and practiced dark magics within these walls. Tonight, we cleanse this evil with purifying flame." Murmurs ran through the crowd, some fearful, others doubtful. Maerwynn recognized faces she had known all her life. The blacksmith whose wife she had helped through a difficult childbirth, the carpenter whose daughter's fever she had broken, the elderly widow whose joints she eased with herbal salves. "These are my people," she whispered. "I've cared for them, healed them, and some will still turn on you out of fear," Cedric warned. The Duke's words carry the weight of crown and church. Maerwynn touched the medallion at her throat, feeling its reassuring warmth. "Then I must show them something stronger than fear." Before Cedric or Garrick could stop her, she stepped from the shadows and walked toward the gathering. A path seemed to open before her, villagers drawing back in shock as they recognized her. "The witch!" someone cried. "She's here!" Duke Aelfric turned, his hand moving to the ornate sword at his hip. His face was handsome in a severe way, with a close-cropped beard and eyes that burned with zealous purpose. "Maerwynn of Caerwyn," he announced, satisfaction evident in his tone. "You save us the trouble of hunting you down." "There will be no burning tonight, your grace," she replied, her voice carrying clearly across the suddenly silent crowd. "Not of my home, nor of any innocent in this village." Aelfric's lips curved in a cold smile. "You stand accused of witchcraft, woman. Your guilt is evident in Lord Cedric's bewitchment and the unnatural healing witnessed by dozens." "I am a healer," she acknowledged, "as was my teacher before me, and hers before that. If skill with herbs and knowledge of the body's mysteries is witchcraft, then burn every midwife and bone setter in the realm." The Duke's eyes narrowed. "Do not play games with me, witch. We know what you are. The last descendant of the Caerwynian sorcerers, practitioners of forbidden magic." Maerwynn felt a ripple of shock pass through the crowd. Some of the older villagers crossed themselves, while others whispered urgently to one another. "I am Maerwynn of Caerwyn," she declared, standing taller. "And I have never used my gifts to harm, only to heal." "She speaks truth." Lord Cedric's voice rang out as he emerged from the shadows, Sir Garrick at his side. Gasps rose from the crowd at the sight of their lord's battered face. This woman saved my life when your physicians had given me up for dead, Duke Aelfric. Aelfric's expression hardened. Lord Cedric, I see you've escaped your accommodations. Further proof of the witch's influence. The only influence at work here is ambition, Cedric countered, pointing at Osric. My cousin seeks my lands and title. The accusation of witchcraft provides a convenient pretext. Osric stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. You were enchanted, cousin. The woman used unholy powers. Silence, Aelfric commanded. The matter is beyond petty lordly disputes now. The woman has confessed to being of Calunian blood. By the king's law, she must burn. Maerwynn felt the energy building within her, responding to the threat. The medallion grew warm against her skin, and she knew what she must do. I will not burn, she said simply. With a swift motion, she pulled the medallion from beneath her clothing and held it high. As before, light erupted from the ancient copper disc, bathing the village square in silver radiance. Villagers fell to their knees, some in terror, others in awe. Aelfric's soldiers stepped back involuntarily, crossing themselves. Only the Duke himself stood firm, his face twisted with righteous fury. Behold, he shouted over the crowd's frightened murmurs. The witch reveals her true nature. I reveal truth, Maerwynn countered, her voice amplified by the power flowing through her. Look upon me, people of Caerwyn. I have delivered your children, eased your pain, sat vigil with your dying. If this is witchcraft, then let it be judged by its fruits. She turned to where an elderly woman cowered against a nearby wall, the widow Edith, crippled by joint ache for years. With gentle purpose, Maerwynn approached her, the light following like a mantle. May I? She asked softly. Trembling, Edith nodded. Maerwynn placed her free hand on the woman's gnarled fingers. Silver light flowed between them, and when it faded, Edith flexed her hands in wonderment, the twisted joints straight and supple once more. Miracle, someone whispered from the crowd. Trickery, Aelfric countered. Soldiers, seize the witch. Two guards moved forward reluctantly, only to be intercepted by Sir Garrick. Other villagers began to stir, the blacksmith and carpenter stepping between Maerwynn and the remaining soldiers. You would defend a witch? Aelfric demanded incredulously. We defend our healer, the blacksmith replied, hefting his hammer, who delivered my son when no one else could save him or my wife, and cured my daughter's fever, the carpenter added, when your priests offered only prayers for her soul. More villagers joined them, forming a protective circle around Maerwynn. Not all. Some hung back in fear or uncertainty, but enough to give Aelfric's men pause. Lord Cedric moved to Maerwynn's side, his presence lending noble authority to her position. The people have made their judgment, Duke Aelfric. As have I. Maerwynn of Caerwyn stands under my protection as rightful Lord of Thornold. Aelfric's hand tightened on his sword hilt. You defy the king's law? I uphold a higher law, Cedric replied. One that recognizes goodness by its works, not by conformity to doctrine. For a tense moment, violence seemed inevitable. Then, unexpectedly, Lady Elspeth appeared at the edge of the crowd. Your Grace, she called to Aelfric. A messenger has arrived from the capital. The king requires your immediate presence regarding Frankish incursions on the northern border. Aelfric hesitated, clearly torn between his duty to the crown and his zealous desire to complete his witch hunt. Finally, practicality won out. This matter is not concluded, he declared, sheathing his sword. I will return with the king's own authority, and no village rabble will stand in the way of justice. He turned to Lord Osric. You will accompany me to court, my lord. The king will wish to hear your testimony regarding your cousin's condition. Osric paled, clearly understanding that his gambit had failed. With Cedric clearly in command of his faculties and the villagers rallying to Maerwynn's defense, his accusations now seemed self-serving rather than righteous. As Duke Aelfric and his men departed, taking a reluctant Osric with them, the tension in the village square gradually eased. Villagers approached Maerwynn cautiously, some seeking healing, others simply wishing to understand what they had witnessed. What happens now? Sir Garrick asked quietly, joining Maerwynn and Cedric at the edge of the crowd. Aelfric will return, Cedric acknowledged grimly, and he will bring more men, perhaps even royal authority. Then we have little time, Maerwynn said. I must learn to control these powers fully, to understand what it truly means to be of Caerwyn. Cedric took her hand, a public gesture that caused whispers among the watching villagers. You will not face this alone. Thornold stands with Caerwyn, as it should have generations ago. In the soft glow of the medallion, which had dimmed to a gentle radiance, their eyes met with shared purpose and something deeper, something neither had expected to find in the chaos of recent days. The old shrine in the forest, Maerwynn suggested. It holds knowledge I've only begun to access. With time and study, time we shall have, Cedric promised. I will ensure it. As night settled fully over Caerwyn village, a new chapter began, not just for Maerwynn and Lord Cedric, but for all who had witnessed power wielded with compassion rather than fear. The last daughter of Caerwyn had awakened to her heritage, and the world would never be the same. For in the quiet moments after conflict, when truth stands revealed in silver light, even the most entrenched boundaries, between noble and commoner, between old faiths and new, between what is known and what is possible, can dissolve like morning mist before the rising sun.